Trigger warning. This video recalls information that is highly graphic in nature, including physical abuse, sexual assault, and other acts of violence. By the time this video would have been uploaded, you almost certainly already heard the disturbing news. R&B singer Cassandra Ventura, known to most as Cassie, has filed a federal lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, alleging years of abuse and rape from the rapper turned mogul. In a released statement, Cassie says, "After years in silence and darkness, I am finally ready to tell my story and speak up on behalf of myself and for the benefit of other women who face violence and abuse in their relationships." The lawsuit and ensuing allegations have predictably prompted a swift and full denial from Diddy, who likely intends to defend himself from these accusations to the best of his ability. Equally predictable is the groundswell of anti-Cassie sentiment from the incel basement dwellers who insist that Cassie's lawsuit is motivated by money and greed, with their evidence being a reference to the statute of limitations provided by the New York Adult Survivors Act expiring on November 24th, just 8 days before the lawsuit was filed. Ben Brafman, lawyer for Diddy, issued a statement indicating, "Mr. Combs vehemently denies these offensive and outrageous allegations. For the past 6 months, Mr. Combs has been subjected to Ms. Ventura's persistent demand of $30 million under the threat of writing a damaging book about their relationship, which was unequivocally rejected as blatant blackmail. Despite withdrawing her initial threat, Ms. Ventura has now resorted to filing a lawsuit riddled with baseless and outrageous lies, aiming to tarnish Mr. Combs' reputation and seeking a payday." Meanwhile, Representation for Cassie has released a statement advising, "Mr. Combs offered Ms. Ventura 8 figures to silence her and prevent the filing of this lawsuit. She rejected his efforts and decided to give a voice to all women who suffer in silence." Ventura herself said, "Finally ready to tell my story and to speak up on behalf of myself and for the benefit of other women who face violence and abuse in their relationships. With the expiration of New York's Adult Survivors Act fast approaching, it became clear that this was an opportunity to speak up about the trauma I have experienced and that I will be recovering from for the rest of my life." But before we get into the details of the allegations and the lawsuit in general, let's get some quick background on both of them for some context. Cassandra Elizabeth Ventura was born on August 26, 1986 in New London, Connecticut. Ever the talent, Cassie started modeling at the age of 14, and by the time she hit 16, had already made a name for herself, with appearances in Delia's fashion catalog, and 17, and even an appearance in Mario's music video for Just a Friend. Shortly after graduating high school, Cassie met music producer Ryan Leslie and was signed to his record label Next Selection. As a brief aside, there were rumors of a brief tryst between Ryan and Cassie, though I was unable to find any solid confirmation by either party on this. I will let you decide for yourselves, however.
At the time that she signed that first deal and you guys working together,
Yeah.
was this a romantic relationship?
Well, it was a very personal relationship, and it was. She was close to everything that I loved. You know what I mean? So, music is just something that I love, and she's clearly just when two people have that much personal interaction and time, they spend that much time together, it's inevitable that a strong personal bond is going to be formed. And the type of chemistry that we had musically and personally, the relationship that we had was inevitable.
So you guys had some sort of romantic relationship during that time?
He's going in, right?
I mean, that's pretty much how how you answer the question.
Yeah,
you're not denying the fact you had a romantic relationship.
I'll say I love Cassie. I love her. You know what I mean? And I fell in love with her. I fell in love with the music. I fell in love with her family, and everything that it took. For two young people in New York City hustling together, it was inevitable that we be in love. You know.
As an additional aside, it is worth noting that Cassie would have been 18 at the time and Ryan Leslie himself would have been 26 at the time. Regardless, shortly after signing with Next Selection, her debut single, Me and You, would go on to catch the attention of Diddy himself, resulting in Cassie being signed to Bad Boy via a joint venture with Next Selection. Sean Combs, on the other hand, also known as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or Diddy, was born back in the prehistoric era on November 4th, 1969. Diddy grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, under the care of just his mother, Janice Combs, after his dad, Melvin Combs, was shot and killed when Sean was only 2. Sean would graduate from Mount St. Michael Academy in 1987, just 1 year after Cassie was born, and would go on to attend Howard University, dropping out after 2 years. Diddy would get his start in the music industry as an intern in Uptown Records in 1990. He would later become a talent director and play a role in developing Jodeci and Mary J. Blige. Diddy would eventually be fired from Uptown and go on to found Bad Boy Entertainment in collaboration with Arista Records. Bad Boy Records would go on to cultivate such hip-hop legends as the Notorious B.I.G., 112, Shine, Craig Mack, Lil' Kim, Carl Thomas, and many others. By most accounts, Diddy and Cassie met in 2005, and though the lawsuit doesn't specify when their relationship began, most sources seem to agree that their romantic relationship began sometime in 2007, apparently stemming from Cassie's role as a spokesmodel for Diddy's fashion label Sean John. Now, before getting into the details of the lawsuit, I would just like to provide a quick definition of groomer, as it shall become very important later. Sexual grooming is when a sexual predator builds a relationship with a child or adult to abuse and exploit them. They build trust, but use it to control, isolate, and abuse their victims emotionally, physically, and sexually. A groomer often comes across as charming, helpful, and kind at first. It can be easy to trust them and lower your guard, but they often use threats, violence, or other coercion to force you into sexual activity you don't want. While grooming can happen in different ways, most sexual predators use certain grooming patterns. But grooming doesn't happen overnight, and there are red flags along the way. Stages of grooming can often look like victim selection. A groomer scopes out their victim first by observing them for a period of time. They choose someone based on how easy it is to get in touch with them or how vulnerable they may seem. For example, a groomer might target a child who doesn't have an adult around. Gain access to the victim and build trust. They may try to become your friend by striking up a casual conversation. They'll seem charming and friendly to lower your guard in hopes to become less alert around them. Build trust. Once they have access to you, they'll shower you with praises and want to spend time one-on-one with you. They may give you gifts and attention and share secrets with you to make you feel special. Isolate. As they gain your trust, they'll start to pull you away from family and friends. This isolation tactic gives them the chance to become your true friend or go-to person. You may recall the trigger warning from the beginning of this video. That was because of the content of the complaint filed by Cassandra Ventura. Though I will not read the entire complaint verbatim, I will be paraphrasing substantial portions of the document, as I think it is important to get a full picture of the allegations being made before presenting my analysis. In 2022, Mr. Combs received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Awards. During his acceptance speech, Mr. Combs stated, "I have to give a special shout out, thank you love, to the people that was really there for me." He named a number of people before adding, "and also Cassie, for holding me down in the dark times, love." The truth, however, is that Cassie, Miss Cassandra Ventura, was held down by Mr. Combs and endured over a decade of his violent behavior and disturbed demands. For Miss Ventura, the dark times were those she spent trapped by Mr. Combs in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking. Among other violent and unlawful acts, Mr. Combs raped Miss Ventura in her own home after she tried to leave him, often punched, beat, kicked, and stomped on Miss Ventura, resulting in bruises, pursed lips, black eyes, and bleeding. Blew up a man's car after he learned that he was romantically interested in Mrs. Ventura, forced Miss Ventura to engage in sex acts with male sex workers while masturbating and filming the encounters, ran out of his apartment with a firearm in pursuit of a rival industry executive whom he learned was nearby, demanded that Miss Ventura carry his firearm in her purse just to make her uncomfortable and demonstrate how dangerous he is, and introduced Miss Ventura to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse and required her to procure illicit prescriptions to satisfy his own addictions. While it is important to remember that these allegations were not proven in a court of law, Diddy's swift settlement is not something to be taken lightly. And if even half of these allegations are true, the behavior exhibited by Diddy was textbook grooming behavior. He systematically isolated and fostered the sense that she needed him, all from a man that is pretty much old enough to be her father. And despite all the outrage from the online incels, it is a legitimate victory that Cassie will receive financial compensation for the years of abuse that she allegedly suffered at the hands of Sean Diddy Combs. It's hard to say what kind of damage these allegations and the lawsuit settlement will do to Diddy's reputation. Ultimately, it may not even matter that much. We don't have the jarring pictures that we did have back when Chris Brown abused Rihanna, and we don't have any criminal charges being filed against Diddy. And it ultimately does not matter in the sense that Diddy will be just fine. He paid out a lot of money, which ultimately to him is nothing. He is quite wealthy. He has enjoyed most of his life. And even if from a career perspective he's unable to do anything else for the rest of his life, he still will live the rest of his life an extremely wealthy man. So ultimately these consequences are minimal to him. Him having to pay Cassie benefits Cassie, but it doesn't really harm him. As a prison abolitionist myself, it's not like I was necessarily gung-ho at the prospect of Diddy going to prison for an extended period of time, or at all necessarily. However, I do think the real analysis, the real takeaway from all of this, is that when it all comes down to it at the end of the day, the real problem is that the rich and powerful remain above the law. They remain untouchable. Diddy just gets to throw some coins, some pennies, which is what this is for him. He gets to throw some pennies at this problem and go about living the rest of his life with no issue whatsoever. And before you come to my comments with the victim blaming nonsense, she should have said something sooner and all of that nonsense, I want to know how many of you with that opinion have survived what Cassie has survived. Making all of this worse is that there have been so many hints and little nuggets of information here and there over the years hinting at the fact that Diddy was a monster. He's never really tried to hide it particularly well. There have been so many rumors and just little hints that he's dropped, some fights that he's gotten in, his mistreatment of rappers under his label. We've known for a long time that this was not a good dude. But as I was alluded to in Cassie's complaint, in the lawsuit that she filed, he has a huge network and people protect him. He's respected and feared within the industry. And this is also part of the problem. Whether we're talking about Diddy or Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby, people are always so quick to blame the female victims, the women, for not stepping forward sooner. Why did you wait? Why did you wait so long? But no one ever seems to hold to account all the dozens of men that have known what monsters these men have been for years and kept it quiet. Because why? It didn't affect them directly, or because they were afraid of said powerful figure. Why is it always on the victim themselves to come forward and not on all of the other men who quietly witness this behavior and say nothing about it? How many of us would in the street see a woman being curb stomped and do nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. Not call the cops, not intervene, nothing. But we're supposed to give all of these men a pass and blame the victim. If you were ever a victim of abuse and you're watching this or listening to this right now, just understand that nothing that you endured or survived was your fault. If you didn't feel like speaking up about it at the time, that is not your fault. And men in particular, we need to do better.